In the world of Dungeons and Dragons, there are so many different classes to choose from. But how do you choose just one?
Well, you don't have to. Multiclassing is a great option in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition to really help you build the perfect player character by combining the powers, abilities, and skills of two or perhaps even more classes together. My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we discuss everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for Dungeon Masters.
We upload new videos every Thursday, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today, we are looking at our top 5 favorite multi-class combinations in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We have restrained ourselves a little bit and we are looking at combinations between only 2 classes. We didn't get into the triple classes, but these are some of the coolest, most fun, and most powerful options in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
This is a high-level overview. We're going to be talking about the cool benefits you get from combining these 2 classes. If you want more details on the classes themselves, we have an entire list of class guides that you can check out.
Now, the principal benefit of multi-classing in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is that it greatly increases the versatility of your character. By combining the abilities that you gain from one class and another, you can unlock new synergies that can greatly increase your character's power or give them more adaptable options in various situations.
When you multi-class, you are going to be losing out on a lot of the high-level abilities of those classes. But most classes in Dungeons & Dragons are pretty front-loaded, meaning that they get a lot of their key abilities and features at the early stages.
This fact is very important for the combinations we're looking at today. Most of the combinations we're looking at, you only need 3 or 5 levels of each of the classes to get a really awesome combination rolling, which means that you can be playing this character in the mid-levels of play when it really matters. Waiting for very high levels for a multi-class build that relies on 3 or 4 classes to come together can really make your character feel like a bit of a mess until you get to that high-level point. We're really interested in getting character options that make our characters feel awesome as soon as possible. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get rolling.
As usual, we haven't ranked these in any specific order. These are just our favorite choices.
So the first one that we're looking at is a little bit of a controversial choice because it makes your character somewhat of a servant between 2 masters, and that is the Paladin Warlock multiclass.
This is an interesting choice because Paladins swear a sacred oath, where Warlocks make a Eldritch Pact.
Both Paladins and Warlocks deal with supernatural and extraplanar forces. Paladins and Warlocks alike may traffic with fiends, celestials, fae, and other spirits, which means that your Warlock Paladin could be something of a witch knight, one who has an Oath of the Ancients and a Fae Pact, or a Paladin of the Oath of Vengeance, sworn to the Raven Queen and a Hexblade Warlock instead.
Mechanically speaking, the idea here is that you take 3 levels of Warlock and then carry on with Paladin as long as you want.
Now, one of the big advantages here is that if you choose to go with a Hexblade Warlock, this means that your character now relies on their charisma score for basically everything. You're going to be using it for making your attack rolls with your melee weapons, as long as you're using your Warlock's Pact of the Blade Pact weapon. And you will also be using Charisma for both your Paladin and Warlock spellcasting. This means that you can choose a race that gets a bonus to your Charisma, pump that Charisma score really, really high, slap on some heavy armor, especially if you take your first level as Paladin, and then go to town and not really have to worry about any of your other ability scores, although you'll probably want to invest in Constitution.
One of the coolest things about this multiclass is that you can use your Warlock spell slots for Divine Smites, and those spell slots come back on short rest.
This means that your Warlock Paladin may be able to be much more liberal with their Divine Smites because you know you can get those back on a short rest. And you can use your Paladin spell slots to cast some of your other Warlock spells. Even if you're only taking a couple levels of Warlock, you have the opportunity to get some really interesting picks here, like Hex or Armor of Agathes, which bring in some extra neat little perks for your character.
You don't gain much more by gaining extra levels of Warlock, and I think Paladin is the core class that you're looking at in this build.
Yeah, I think by 9th level, your character will have extra attack, Divine Smite. You'll be getting your Charisma modifier to your saving throws, using that for all of your attack rolls thanks to Hex Warrior. You're going to have heavy armor proficiency. You're going to be a really robust and flexible character. And I think one of the awesome things about this multi-class combination is that you get Spells, melee combat, you get to be the party's face because you've got a really high charisma score. You're really, really resilient. You kind of get to have it all with this character. You just also have to manage all the role-playing baggage that it comes with.
That being said, I love the idea of the Oath of Vengeance Paladin being sworn to the Raven Queen. I think there's a lot of great role-playing options, and if you really want to play the Witch Knight, this is a great option.
Of course, the Paladin isn't the only awesome class to combine with 1 to 3 levels of Warlock. The Sorcerer, or the affectionately known Sorlock, is one of the coolest blaster builds that you can create for a character, and another fantastic multi-class combination.
Again, mechanically this works by taking 2 or 3 levels of Warlock and then going Sorcerer the rest of the way.
Some people like to take a couple levels of Sorcerer, maybe upwards of 5 levels of Sorcerer first, and then multi-class to Warlock. There's a lot of different ways that you can build this character, but the end result is that usually somewhere around 8th or 9th level, you've got a character that's got about 5 or 6 levels of Sorcerer under their belt and 2 or 3 levels of Warlock. And you're probably going to be picking up the meta magic options as a sorcerer for Quicken Spell and possibly Twin Spell or Empowered Spell.
And if you haven't put it together yet, you can use Quicken Spell on Eldritch Blast, and at higher levels, this is going to make a lot of attacks.
Indeed. Eldritch Blast is one of the best cantrips in the game to use alongside Quicken Spell. Either casting a leveled spell with your regular action and then quickening Eldritch Blast gets really good at racking up lots of extra damage. And we can find many more ways to improve this depending on what type of sorcerer and what type of warlock we are. I could imagine being a Celestial Pact warlock that is also a Divine Soul sorcerer, or perhaps a wild magic sorcerer that has made an Infernal Pact as a way of stabilizing their powers.
Much like when we discussed with the Paladin, adding Warlock to a class gives you these regenerating spell slots that come back on a short rest, which with the Sorcerer, you can use to regain sorcery points.
Now, some folks have taken this to a really big extreme by using the fact that you can convert the Warlock spell slots into sorcery points and then use those sorcery points to regain Sorcerer spell slots, resulting in a character that never actually needs to take a long rest. There have been a couple rules and clarifications that mean that this might not work, and for a lot of dungeon masters, they're probably going to shut it down. Regardless of if you play it this way or not, the ability to have spell slots that come back on a short rest that can be then converted to sorcery points and used for other things really adds a lot of flexibility to the sorcerer. And while you are giving up some of your higher level spell casting, this does make you into a very potent blaster mage.
So if you're looking to wreak havoc on your table, the Sorlock is a great way to go. There's nothing better than throwing down a fireball and then following it up with a quickened Eldritch Blast.
Well, the Sorcerer Warlock might be the brute force blaster mage. As far as the battlefield brute, the Fighter Barbarian really takes the cake as one of my favorite multi-class combinations.
Mechanically speaking, you can just grab a couple levels of Barbarian and then go Fighter the rest of the way, and that should give you enough to really mess up the battlefield.
A fighter gains so much from taking just 2 levels of Barbarian. You'll get Rage, the fantastic Reckless Attack, as well as Danger Sense and some slightly more hit points depending on how you roll with those hit dice.
The downside of this is that if you are going to be raging as a fighter, you're not going to be wearing heavy armor. They don't work well together. But the added benefits you get to your damage output is not to be laughed at.
Imagining a fighter barbarian in a barbarian's rage, using Reckless Attack, making an action surge turn with Polearm Master and Great Weapon Master, I don't think much is going to survive that onslaught. And at the same time, the character is going to be incredibly resilient thanks to the damage resistances granted by Barbarian Rage.
And this is where your enemies turn to you and say, "You and what army?" And you can laugh in their face as you cut down their entire force.
When your fighter decides to embrace their inner rage and take those Barbarian levels is really going to vary. I could see taking this as early as level 7, so once you've got your extra feat from being a 6th level fighter, grabbing those 2 levels of Barbarian, I think fits really, really well there. Although you could wait as late as 11th level when you get your 3rd attack from being a fighter, and then imagine Action Surge, 3 attacks, another 3 attacks, Barbarian Rage, Reckless Attack. Oh, that's a lot of damage.
They're a walking blender.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty scary, and I think it's really effective. A fighter gains so much from being able to just declare advantage on all their attacks.
And if you're a Battlemaster fighter, you can use all of your maneuvers even when you're raging.
This really makes for a potent melee combatant and probably one of the scariest hand-to-hand combat damage dealers out there.
I often come back to how powerful the Action Surge ability is for that fighter. It's one of the most potent abilities that any class gets in the game. And that's why pairing the fighter with the rogue is another excellent multi-class option.
Indeed. In particular, pairing the fighter with the assassin rogue yields a pretty scary combination. Like the fighter barbarian, we only need to take about 3 levels of rogue here to really start cooking with gas, because the thing we're here for is the assassin rogue's assassinate ability, which guarantees critical hits for any enemy that we have surprised. Combine this with a great dexterity score and some really good modifiers to stealth through expertise. We're going to sneak up on our enemies and action surge assassinate them.
This multi-class does mean that you won't get your 4th attack as a fighter. But if you do get that surprise round and you have your 3 attacks and you're able to action surge, making it 6 attacks, all of them being crits, you're pretty much going to nuke any boss out there.
Yeah, I don't think much is going to stand up to that many critical hits coming down, particularly if you're using 2-weapon fighting, or if you really want to get nasty, take Sharpshooter and Crossbow Expert to do this at range. It's much easier to surprise enemies with ranged attacks, and being able to just unload a bunch of automatically critting Sharpshooter Crossbow Expert shots.
That crossbow expert is going to give you bonus attacks. The sharpshooter is going to give you a +10 to damage. If you're critting, it's over. That's a lot of damage.
Yeah, from upwards of 120 feet range, that means you're really going to be able to get the drop on the enemy that you're surprising. I don't think much is going to be able to survive that kind of onslaught. And again, even if you're not 14th level, which is when you're going to be able to make 3 attacks and have assassinate combined, even at earlier levels, as early as level 8, when you've got 5 levels of fighter under your belt and 3 levels of rogue, if you're a human, you can still have crossbow expert and sharpshooter by here. I don't think many challenge rating 8 monsters are going to survive that kind of damage output at all.
So there's one class that stands above many of the others as a great choice for taking a 1-level dip in multi-classing, and that's the Cleric.
Because clerics choose their subclass at first level, if your character comes to a divine calling at a higher level, when they take their first cleric level and choose their domain, they will gain a lot of perks right away at first level, including if you choose the life, nature, tempest, or war domain, proficiency in heavy armor, and potentially proficiency in all martial weapons as well. I love combining this with a wizard.
Combining Cleric and Wizard gives you a great option for a Battle Mage, because now you're one of the greatest spellcasters in the game with the Wizard, but combining that with proficiency in heavy armor and weapons, it's going to be an awesome force to be reckoned with at the table.
So I love this idea of playing an Elven Wizard that takes 1 level of Cleric as the war domain, and then takes the Blade Singer Wizard option. So you're going to have extra attack, proficiency in heavy armor, and you're only going to delay your spell casting by about 1 level. So you're only 1 level behind your primary spell casting progression. But at the same time, you've also been able to pick up really good spells on the battlefield like Bless, Healing Word, and Guiding Bolt.
And then you combine that with your prowess in melee combat with your ability to use these weapons and armor, you can pick up a lot of other cool spells to amplify your attacks and damage.
Now, of course, you could combine this with an extra level of Cleric, some of the other wizard disciplines, and many of the other Cleric domains to gain a lot of cool benefits. There's a really cool build out there by combining the knowledge domain Cleric with the divination wizard that really results in a true prophet with lots of expertise and knowledge out there. That I quite like that combination. But almost any character class could benefit from hearing the call of the gods and taking just 1 level of Cleric.
I could also see a really good option here of combining a College of Lore Bard with a Life Domain Cleric.
This is really cool because the Life Domain Clerics gain that very valuable Disciple of Life ability, which is a massive boost to healing. So taking 1 level of Life Domain Cleric gives you heavy armor proficiency and a huge bonus to any healing spells that you might cast, making this a really great option for both bards and druids interested in being the party healer.
For those of you watching this video, a slight disclaimer is that these multi-class options can be very powerful at the table, and sometimes can even be more powerful than anybody at the table who is playing a straight-up class rather than multi-classing. So for you DMs out there, just be aware that you may have to do some balancing on the power level of your party.
The counterbalance to this, though, that players should be aware of is that multiclassing is challenging, and not all combinations work as well as others. And even some of these potent combinations have a few levels where they are really a mess, and the abilities haven't fully come online yet, and the whole character doesn't really feel that coherent. Generally speaking, with a lot of multiclass combinations, it really takes until about 6th to 10th level for them to really come into their own, and the early to mid levels can actually feel really demoralizing. And in fact, if your character progresses beyond those levels, you might find missing out on those higher level abilities really is something that you regret. So be careful when you're multiclassing, because while it can yield a couple amazing levels of play where you might be the star member of your party, the levels before it and even the higher levels can be a little bit touch and go.
I'm a big fan of adding multiclassing in as a character option through roleplay. You don't necessarily just want to throw this together without having a great idea on why your character is a Paladin Warlock or a Sorcerer Warlock. There are a lot of great multiclassing options, but I always find it more fun to really tie it in to who your character is.
Work with your dungeon master on this. There is no multiclass combination that is so oddball and off the wall that you as a player and your dungeon master cannot come up with some creative way to make it work and make sense with the lore of your dungeon master's world and the story that you want to have for your character. Multiclassing is a fantastic way to represent and play out your character's personality, developing and changing, and their evolving story. So use that as an opportunity to find out how your character can be more satisfying to roleplay, rather than just coming up with these multi-class combinations to eke out every last bit of power for your character.
So these have been our top 5 multi-class combinations in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you have other great multi-class options that you've tried out, tell us about them in the comments below.
If you're enjoying our show, please consider supporting our work on Patreon. You can find out how by following the links in the description below.
Don't forget to check out our live play Dungeons of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got a whole video that explains the basic rules of multiclassing right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
In the dungeon.